She was just a girl selling drawings on the street. He was a billionaire with everything, except purpose. One moment connected their worlds forever, but no one could imagine what that decision would cost him. In the bustling streets of Chicago, where skyscrapers loom like silent giants over the crowded sidewalks, Eleanor stands at a busy intersection. Each day, she sets up a small, makeshift stand displaying her hand-drawn artworks, hoping to catch the eye of a passerby. These drawings, filled with the vibrant colors of dreams she refuses to let fade, are her lifeline, a small rebellion against the fate that life has handed her. The city moves around her in a blur of faces, strangers who see her as part of the scenery, just another fixture on the street. Yet, Eleanor does not falter. Her determination is fueled by necessity, a need to provide for her younger sister since their mother's untimely death and their father's abandonment. She can't afford the luxury of discouragement, not when a little girl at home waits eagerly for her return each evening. Her hands, though chilled by the biting wind that sweeps through the streets, move deftly over her latest drawing. It's a depiction of the Chicago River at dusk, the waters reflecting the city's lights, turning the scene into a dance of color and shadow. For Eleanor, this is more than art. It is a message in a bottle, a hope that someone will see the beauty she sees. On the other side of town, Nicholas Whitmore sits in the towering glass building that houses his corporate empire. His office is at the pinnacle, overlooking the vast expanse of the city he's helped to mold. Despite his wealth, there is a palpable emptiness that surrounds him, an echo of joy that once filled the space. The losses of his past, his sister's death, betrayals in his family have hardened him, turning his heart into a fortress. As the day wears on, Nicholas's patience with the corporate world wears thin. Meetings blend into one another, each one a repeat of numbers, projections, and soulless handshakes. The dispassion he feels for the business that once ignited his passion is suffocating. In a rare impulse, driven by a need for air and a break from the monotony, he decides to walk the streets below. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows on the pavement, when Nicholas's path leads him to the intersection where Eleanor stands. His eyes, so used to scanning contracts and documents, are unexpectedly drawn to the vivid colors of her artwork. He pauses, something he hasn't done in years, taken aback by the emotion her work evokes. At that moment, a security guard from the nearby upscale restaurant approaches Eleanor. His words are sharp, cutting through the air like the cold wind. "You can't sell these here," he snaps, gesturing to her drawings with disdain. The scene starts to draw the attention of passers-by, their expressions a mix of curiosity and indifference. Nicholas watches as Eleanor stands her ground, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly. "Please, I'm just trying to make enough to take care of my sister," she responds, her eyes never leaving the guards. Her dignity in the face of humiliation strikes a chord in Nicholas, awakening a part of him he thought was lost. Compelled by a mix of admiration and a mysterious sense of connection, Nicholas steps forward. The crowd parts slightly, sensing the change in the atmosphere. "I'll buy them," he declares, his voice carrying over the murmur of the crowd. But as he looks into Eleanor's eyes that remind him of someone he once knew, he realizes this isn't enough. "Come with me," he says impulsively, surprising even himself. "I have a proposal for you." His words hang in the air, an invitation to a life-changing journey neither of them could have anticipated. As they walk away from the crowd, Eleanor's cautious hope and Nicholas's newfound purpose weave together, setting the stage for a story that will challenge their realities and redefine their futures. The city, with all its noise and chaos, fades into the background, a mere backdrop to the unfolding drama of two lives intersecting at the crossroads of chance and destiny. Nicholas Whitmore was not born into wealth. He built it, brick by invisible brick. While most children played with wooden blocks and plastic toys, he studied charts, patterns, and the silence of numbers. His first investment was at 17, his first million at 24. By 30, he was on magazine covers, yet no one ever really knew who he was. His world was made of glass, sleek offices, Silent elevators, champagne in boardrooms, a world where people smiled with their mouths, but never with their eyes. And Nicholas? He had learned early on that in order to win, you had to trust no one, not even yourself. He once believed in love, in laughter at the dinner table, in the warmth of a sister's hug. But that belief died quietly the day his only sibling, Clarissa, passed away. An illness that took her fast, but left an echo that never stopped ringing. She was the only one who saw through him, the only one who could make him laugh without him noticing. After her, everything felt colder. He buried himself in mergers and acquisitions. His phone never stopped ringing, and his schedule left no room for grief. That was the plan. Keep moving, keep building, keep forgetting. But no matter how high he climbed, the view never changed. He would look out the window from the top floor and ask himself, what's missing? And yet, he never said it aloud. Because weakness, in his world, had a price. The people around him weren't friends, they were alliances. Some envied him, some feared him. But none loved him. His house, despite its size, echoed at night. He lived alone, dined alone, and when he slept, if he slept, it was with one eye open. Still, Nicholas had everything a man could want, except peace. That evening, before walking into the street where Eleanor stood, he had come from a meeting that had drained him. A deal he thought would bring him closer to purpose, but only reminded him how empty his victories felt. As he left the conference room, he didn't say a word. Just loosened his tie and walked away. No driver, no assistant, just himself and the biting wind of Chicago. He didn't know where he was going. He just walked. Past honking taxis, neon signs, and crowds of strangers, until his feet led him to her, until her voice cut through the numbness like a forgotten melody. And in that one glance, that moment, something cracked. Not the kind of break that destroys, the kind that lets the light in. But Nicholas didn't understand that yet. Not fully, not until much later, when he'd already risked everything to follow where that crack would lead. It wasn't supposed to be a significant day. Just another evening, just another city block. Nicholas walked with his hands in his coat pockets, shoulders tense, mind clouded. He didn't even know what time it was, only that he wanted to breathe something other than boardroom air. Maybe he was running from something. Maybe he was chasing a feeling he couldn't name. The street was busy, but his attention was pulled to the left, almost like a whisper. Not a voice, not a sound, just something. And there she was, Eleanor. She was on the sidewalk near the entrance of a high-end restaurant, clutching a folder full of drawings as if they were made of gold. Her hair was windswept, cheeks pink from the cold. Her lips were moving, soft, polite words. But the man in front of her, wearing a black security jacket, wasn't listening. His voice was loud, sharp, cutting. Nicholas stopped. He wasn't the only one watching, but he was the only one unable to look away. The security guard pointed at her feet, at her papers, barking something about private property and no loitering. Eleanor didn't argue. She just stood there, quiet, eyes fixed on the man, but not begging, not backing down either. There was a strength in her silence, a defiance wrapped in grace. Nicholas stepped forward without thinking. He didn't plan his words. They just came. "Is there a problem here?" The guard turned, startled. His tone softened when he recognized Nicholas. Anyone in business circles knew his face. Eleanor glanced at Nicholas, confused, but she didn't lower her gaze. He noticed her eyes then. Clear, direct. Tired, yes, but alive. "I'll take everything she's selling," Nicholas said, eyes on the folder, not her. "All of it." Eleanor blinked. "You don't have to." "I want to." But it wasn't really about the drawings. It wasn't about art or charity. It was something deeper. Something in her reminded him of Clarissa. Not in the face, not in the voice, but in the quiet bravery. As the crowd lost interest and moved on, Nicholas handed her a card. Just his name, no title, no logo. She looked at it, then at him, unsure what this meant. He didn't know either, not yet. But what he did know, as he walked away, was that this wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. And Eleanor. She stood there in the cold, card in hand, feeling that strange and unfamiliar sensation, like the ground beneath her life had just shifted ever so slightly. The card stayed in Eleanor's coat pocket for 2 days. She had turned it over in her fingers 100 times. No number, no email, just a name. Nicholas Whitmore. She wasn't sure if it was an invitation or a warning. Part of her wanted to forget about it, pretend nothing had happened. But something wouldn't let her. On the 3rd morning, with the city still stretching awake beneath gray skies, Eleanor took a bus uptown. She didn't even know what she was going to say, only that she needed to know why a man like him had stopped for someone like her. The building was tall, intimidating, polished glass from top to bottom. She hesitated at the revolving door, her reflection barely visible on its surface. But she stepped through it. When she reached the lobby desk and asked to see Nicholas Whitmore, the receptionist blinked in surprise. "Do you have an appointment?" Eleanor held up the card silently. Moments later, she was in an elevator, rising fast. Her palms were sweating. Her heart? Loud enough to hear. But when the doors opened, Nicholas was already standing, waiting, hands in his pockets, the same distant calm in his face. He didn't offer coffee, didn't sit behind his desk like a businessman. Instead, he walked to the window and looked out at the city. "I've been thinking about you," he said, just like that. Eleanor frowned, unsure how to respond. "I don't believe in coincidences," he continued. "There was something in your drawings, and in you, something I've forgotten how to feel." She stayed quiet. Then came the part that caught her breath. "I want to make you a proposal," he said, turning to face her. "Not a job, not charity, a trade." Her eyebrows rose slightly, confused. He saw it. "3 months, you live in my world. I'll teach you what I know, business, art circles, the way these rooms work. In return, you show me whatever it is I saw in you that day. That truth, that fire." Eleanor stared at him, almost offended. "Why me?" Nicholas paused. "Because I think you might be the only real thing I've come across in years." The silence that followed was long, heavy. She didn't say yes, not then. But when she left that office, heart racing, eyes wide, the card felt heavier in her hand. Not like paper anymore, more like a door that had been opened and couldn't be closed again. Eleanor arrived at the mansion just before noon. It wasn't what she expected. It was bigger, quieter. The kind of silence that doesn't come from peace but from distance. Even the walls seemed to whisper. As the heavy front door closed behind her, she felt the weight of it, of all of it, settle on her shoulders. She didn't bring much. Just a small suitcase, her sketchbook, and a heart full of doubt. The housekeeper barely looked at her. She gave quick instructions, tight-lipped, as if Eleanor was a stranger who'd wandered in uninvited. The staff avoided her gaze. They were polite, yes, but it was the kind of politeness that keeps people at arm's length. Eleanor noticed. She felt it in her chest, like a chill no coat could warm. She was shown to a guest room on the 2nd floor. The bed was made perfectly, too perfectly. The window overlooked a trimmed garden with no flowers, just order, like everything else. That afternoon, Nicholas introduced her to his world. They went to a gallery. High ceilings, soft jazz playing, and people who smelled like old money. He didn't hold her hand, didn't speak much. He just walked beside her like she belonged there, even though everyone else looked at her like she didn't. She wore her best dress, one of the few she had. It wasn't enough. An older woman with diamond earrings whispered something to her companion, not even trying to be discreet. Eleanor heard the words. Who is she? A charity case? Her cheeks burned, but she didn't lower her eyes. Not this time. Nicholas heard it too. He didn't react. Later in the car, she finally spoke. I don't fit here. Nicholas looked out the window. Neither do I, he murmured. That night, she sat in her room, sketching by the light of a small lamp. Her pencil moved across the page without thought, like her hands remembered something her heart had forgotten. She drew faces, faces of strangers, faces of people who passed her every day but never saw her. But tonight, someone had seen her. And that was both terrifying and strangely beautiful. At first, no one noticed the change in Nicholas. Not his assistants, not his partners, not even the board members who had known him for years. But something had shifted, quietly, like a string slowly unraveling in the dark. The man who once lived by precision now paused before signing contracts. He showed up late to meetings. Sometimes he didn't show up at all. He was still sharp, still respected. But the sharpness had softened around the edges. His eyes no longer scanned spreadsheets the same way. They wandered more, lingered on windows, watched the rain. During presentations, his mind drifted, not away from business but towards someone who had once stood on a freezing corner, selling dreams on paper. And that began to cost him. At first, it was a missed opportunity. A deal in Singapore that fell through because Nicholas refused to cut a workforce in half just to increase margins. "We don't ruin lives for numbers," he said in a meeting, voice low but final. The room had fallen into stunned silence. The partners were confused. Nicholas Whitmore had never spoken like that before. Then came the canceled contracts, the abrupt withdrawal from a merger he'd been building for over a year. Rumors started. Was he sick? Was he losing control? Losing interest? Behind closed doors, voices rose. Board members whispered about emotional interference. They blamed Eleanor without naming her. A distraction. A risk. Investors didn't want kindness. They wanted returns. Nicholas didn't defend himself. Not once. He simply stared at them with that calm that unnerved them more than anger ever could. One morning, he walked into his office and found it colder than usual. Not the air, but the energy. His second in command, a man he once mentored, handed him a printed statement. "The shareholders are asking for your voluntary withdrawal from active leadership." Nicholas nodded. No argument, no fight. Later that evening, while Eleanor sketched in the sunroom, he entered quietly. She looked up at him. Something in his face, and something was different. "Did something happen?" she asked softly. He sat down across from her, elbows resting on his knees. "I lost them," he said. "All of them." Eleanor's hand stilled. The pencil slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. But he smiled, just slightly. And strangely, "I don't feel empty." It was the first time she saw him not as the man who had everything, but as the man who had finally let something go. It didn't happen all at once. The fall came slowly, like water leaking through a ceiling, unnoticed at first until the cracks gave way and the weight became too much. Nicholas's empire wasn't just shrinking, it was collapsing, quietly, publicly. The headlines came first. Billionaire withdraws from key deals, Whitmore losing control, fall from grace, emotion over logic. The press wasn't kind. They never are when the powerful begin to bleed. Eleanor read the articles in silence. Her name wasn't in them, but she was there, between the lines. Every whisper, every cruel headline. It pointed to her. She didn't belong in boardrooms, didn't belong in that mansion. She was the reason, they'd say, the outsider who dragged him down. She heard the staff murmuring behind doors, not loud enough to confront, but loud enough to wound. And one night, she found herself awake at 3 a.m., sitting on the edge of the guest bed, staring at her reflection in the window. The city was asleep. But her heart wasn't. It beat loud with guilt, with fear, with questions she couldn't answer. Was she helping him or destroying him? Down the hall, Nicholas slept like someone who'd stopped pretending. The pressure that once sat on his chest had lifted. He had lost power, reputation, control, yet there was peace in his face she hadn't seen before. That made it worse. The next morning, Eleanor packed her bag, quietly, carefully. She didn't want him to wake up and see, because if he looked at her the way he had been looking lately, she might not have the strength to leave. As she reached for the door, her fingers trembling, something slipped from her sketchbook. A drawing. Of him. Not the man from the magazines, but the man she'd come to know, quiet, worn, human. She stood there, frozen, eyes on the page. Something inside her whispered, "Don't run." But the world outside? It was louder, and Eleanor had never been more torn. In the stillness of the morning, as the dawn crept through the curtains, Eleanor stood with her bag packed. The decision to leave felt right. It was the only way she could think of to stop being the cause of Nicholas's downfall. Yet, something halted her, something deeper than fear or doubt. She returned the drawing to her sketchbook, her fingers lingering on the page. It was a reminder, not just of who he was, but of what she had become to him, a mirror reflecting a truth he had long ignored. Nicholas found her in the kitchen, brewing coffee with trembling hands. The morning light washed over her, casting long shadows. He didn't speak at first, just watched her quietly, understanding more than words could convey. "Are you leaving?" His voice was soft, almost afraid of the answer. Eleanor turned, her expression torn. "I thought it would be better for you if I wasn't here," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. He stepped closer, his approach gentle. "Eleanor, you're not the reason things are falling apart. You're the reason I'm finally seeing what my life has been missing." The simplicity of his words struck a chord. They stood in silence, the space between them filled with unspoken thoughts and brewing coffee. "Stay," Nicholas finally said. "Not for me, but for you. Let's find out what this is, together." Eleanor looked at him, really looked at him. She saw not just the man from the headlines, but the person he was beneath, the one who had dared to step out of the shadows of his own empire to stand by her side. "Okay," she agreed, her decision anchored not by the weight of obligation, but by the lightness of a newfound hope. "I'll stay." The days that followed were not easy. The media continued to speculate, the business world continued to doubt, but something fundamental had shifted between them. They were no longer just Eleanor and Nicholas. They were collaborators, confidants, co-conspirators in a world that neither fully understood. Together, they began to plan. It wasn't about saving a business or reclaiming a reputation. It was about building something new, something real that could withstand the scrutiny and cynicism of those who watched from the outside. Eleanor's creativity became the cornerstone of their new venture. Nicholas's business acumen gave it structure and strategy. They worked late into the nights, their conversations a blend of brainstorming and revelation. As Eleanor watched their ideas take shape, she realized something vital. She had come into his life as a supposed savior, but in truth, they were saving each other. In the heart of the city, beneath the hum of the relentless night, Eleanor and Nicholas stood looking over the models and sketches scattered across the large oak table. They had been working relentlessly, their lives now entwined in a project that felt as precarious as it was promising. Nicholas had never seen Eleanor so focused, her eyes scanning over every detail, her mind ticking through possibilities and pitfalls. It was her vision, her art that had inspired this new venture. A gallery, but not just any gallery. This one would be a haven for artists who struggled on the fringes, artists who, like Eleanor, had known the bite of winter winds. "This could change everything," Nicholas murmured, tracing the outline of the gallery layout. His voice carried a mix of hope and fear, a cocktail of emotions he hadn't tasted before Eleanor walked into his life. Eleanor looked up, her expression resolute. "It has to work," she said, the weight of their shared future pressed down on her shoulders, a burden she never anticipated but now refused to release. For both of us. They had pooled the last of Nicholas's liquid assets into this venture. The financial magazines had been brutal in their predictions. Nicholas Whitmore, once a titan of industry, now a cautionary tale of misplaced trust and emotional decisions. But as they worked through the night, refining their business plan, Eleanor's confidence became a beacon. Nicholas found himself believing not just in the success of their gallery, but in the redemptive power of second chances. The next day, they pitched their idea to a group of potential investors. The room was filled with skeptics, their faces masks of polite doubt. Nicholas introduced Eleanor, his voice steady. "This isn't just about art," he said, stepping aside so she could lead. "It's about perspectives, seeing the value in what everyone else has overlooked." Eleanor's presentation was passionate, her words painting a vivid picture of a community revived through art, of lives transformed by the recognition and respect that had eluded them. She spoke of sustainability, of culture, of legacy. As she concluded, the room was silent. Then, slowly, applause began, first from one, then another, until it filled the room. They had moved their audience, shifted perceptions. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Contracts were signed, renovations began, artists were contacted. The dream was becoming tangible, built not just on Eleanor's art, but on Nicholas's newfound belief in something greater than profit. Late one evening, as they stood in the future gallery, now buzzing with workers and hope, Nicholas took Eleanor's hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" Eleanor asked, her smile tired but genuine. "For showing me that some risks are worth taking." Their eyes met, and in that look there was a silent acknowledgement of all they had overcome and all they still hoped to achieve. They were no longer just survivors of their past mistakes, but architects of their future. And whatever that future held, they knew they would face it together. The grand opening of the gallery was set against a backdrop of a crisp autumn evening, the kind that painted the sky in strokes of orange and purple. The once empty building, now vibrant with life, buzzed with the murmurs of the city's art lovers and skeptics alike. Eleanor walked through the rooms, her heart full, as she watched visitors engage with the art that had once lived only in the margins. Nicholas stood beside her, his presence a quiet statement of support. He watched not just the art, but Eleanor, seeing her through the eyes of those discovering her work for the first time. The pride he felt was new, a contrast to the sterile triumphs of his previous life. Every piece displayed had a story, a struggle, and a triumph. As guests moved from one piece to another, Eleanor shared these stories, her voice steady and sure. Nicholas noticed the way people were drawn to her, her passion infectious, her resilience inspiring. Among the guests was a critic from one of the city's most respected art journals. He was known for his sharp pen and unyielding standards. Eleanor approached him with a mixture of nerves and determination. Their conversation was quiet but intense, Eleanor defending her vision, the critic probing, challenging. As they spoke, Nicholas watched, understanding that this was her battle to fight, her world to conquer. And she did. By the end of their exchange, the critic's nod was almost imperceptible, but Eleanor's slight smile told Nicholas everything. The evening wound down with guests lingering, not wanting to leave the warmth of the gallery that had quickly become a beacon in the neighborhood. Deals were made, not just for paintings, but for community projects, workshops, and local collaborations. In a quiet corner, Nicholas and Eleanor finally found a moment to themselves. "Look at what you've created," Nicholas said, his voice low, filled with wonder not just at the gallery but at her transformation. Eleanor looked around, her eyes reflecting the soft lighting of the gallery. "We did this," she corrected him gently. "You believed in me when I couldn't. You saw what could be, not just what was." They stepped outside for a moment, the cool air a sharp contrast to the warmth inside. The city sounded different to Nicholas now, not a cacophony of chaos, but a symphony of potential. As they stood there, Eleanor leaned her head against Nicholas's shoulder. "What now?" she asked, a whisper against the backdrop of the bustling city. Nicholas turned, taking her hand, his future suddenly clear in ways it had never been. "Now, we build, not just galleries but a life, together." The realization that they had each given the other a chance to rewrite their stories was profound. They had found love, not in the shadows of their past mistakes, but in the light of their shared courage and creativity. As they turned back to the gallery, the lights inside cast long shadows behind them, stretching out like the path they would walk together. A path of second chances, of new beginnings, and of love that taught them how to begin again. Have you ever stopped to think, how much are you really living? Or are you just surviving one routine day after the next, waiting for something or someone to pull you out of the ordinary? What if one decision, one moment of courage, could change everything? Eleanor didn't wait for the right time. Nicholas didn't let fear stop him. They took a risk, and in doing so, they didn't just change their own lives. They changed each other. Now ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped letting fear write your story? Would you chase that dream you've buried for years? Would you forgive someone, maybe even yourself? Would you dare to believe that something better is still waiting for you? Tell us in the comments, what part of this story touched you the most? Have you ever had someone believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself? If this story made you feel something, hope, sadness, inspiration, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone you know might need this more than you think. And if you want to keep following powerful emotional stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. We're just getting started. And before you go, click the video that's appearing on your screen right now. There's another story waiting for you. One that just might change the way you see everything. We'll see you there.